make it 6 o'clock now, so I'm going to start the meeting. So welcome to the meeting of Bursledon, Hamble, and Hound Local Area Committee. I'm Tonya Craig, I chair this meeting. I'm one of the representatives for Bursledon, and I will go to the other side. Nearest yourself is Becky Wiseman, who is our Assistant Local Area Manager. We have Alison Holland, who is one of the councillors from Netley and Hamble. Jane O'Sullivan is one of our Bursledon members. Cllr Cross is Hamble and Netley, and Steve Holes is another Bursledon member. This side nearest the screen we have Claire Campbell Best, planner. I always forget the hyphen. Rebecca Altman. On my left is Ross McLean, local area manager. We have Catherine from Democratic Service and Abida from Lead. Just for housekeeping, we're not expecting any fire alarms, so should one go off, that's probably the nearest exit, and follow Catherine, she'll be the first out. Should you need the toilets, it's where you came, just through the doors to the right, there's a unisex adult toilet through there to use. Okay, apologies, Catherine. Thank you very much. Public participation, anything that isn't on the agenda? No, nobody signalled to speak, but I always like to ask just in case. Declarations of interest, members of any have declarations? No? Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting, you've all had a chance to look through this. Steve? Seconded by Jane. Those in favour of accepting as a true record? That's everybody. Thank you very much. Chair's announcements. I haven't got any at this stage. No. I thought there was something that I was going to say, but I'll probably say enough during the meeting, so I won't say anything there. Oh, actually, yes, Steve. Just that we've got it on record so that we can bring it up at the next meeting. Postbox. And we need to look at the pedestrian crossing as well, because we need to get onto county. That is not working in the way it should be working, so county need to come down and have a look at that. But yeah, for those for the next meeting.
Yes, I'll be bringing a motion on both to the next meeting. I was down on the school crossing this afternoon for an hour, and the traffic is massive, the volume, and everybody behaved themselves, but of course when you're stood there with a lanyard around your neck, people do behave themselves. But it's, you know, there's a lot of foot traffic as well there. So yes, we do need to make it safer.
I think if it had just been the odd private car, it wouldn't be as bad. But it's lots of private cars, commercial vans, and we've also had footage of buses jumping across that pedestrian crossing when people have got feet on it. So we need to do something about it before somebody's seriously injured. We may need to have a look at the post box, not the post box, the telephone boxes that are disappearing again with no consultation whatsoever, and those are used by the elderly in that area, so it's upped and being removed with no consultation from anyone. So we need to look at those to make sure that the ones that are being used stay, or at least we're consulted before they move. Okay, Ross, report the local area manager.
Thank you, Chair. 13 recommendations from myself for tonight. I'll just run through the recommendations quickly and then take any questions or comments. So we've got four grant applications this time around from community grants from Itchin's South Scout Group, the Hamble Conservation Volunteers, Hamble Squash Club and Wet Wheels. We have an application for developer contributions Pylands Wood to improve the toilets for 6,500 and to install new toilets in the playgroup area in the Pylands Wood Community Centre. And then to note some spends that we've done some work in between our last meetings. So £1,300 has been used to install bollards at Kestrel Park to protect it from illegal encampments. We spent £1,800 on 4 bins across the patch in that period, and also a small cost of £151 for Dragon's Teeth in Hound gardens that had rotted away. And then finally the last 3 all link into the Bursledon area. One is a request for a grant of 26,000 through developer contributions to improve footpath and the bridge works in the Woodland Park in Hungerford. Approved the grant request of £5,000 from reserves to fund the outdoor play area at Hamble. Apologies, it's not in Bursledon. And then the last two are relating to Long Lane Pavilion. One is the request for the reallocation of £102,657 from developer contributions that we allocated in 2021 to be reused for Long Lane Pavilion, and then an additional £43,000 from developer contributions to the Long Lane Pavilion project, with the shortfall of £20,000 being made up of from Bursledon Parish Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose all of these. I think it shows what we're doing in the area, and it's absolutely vital that this message gets out, that even though times are hard, and they are still hard for local government, we're still spending money and investing in the local area, and we will continue to do so. I think I'm pleased about Long Lane Pavilion. That needed to be sorted and set in motion, and hopefully that will start soon. But I just wanted to check on the footpath improvements and bridge repairs to the Woodland Park in Hungerford. I've been sending messages regarding a member of the public that's been actually clearing the footpath and bridge next to the Scout Hut. Apparently she has reported it to Hampshire County Council, but it hasn't been done. I don't know whether this is the same one or whether it's further along the same footpath, but it is a Hampshire Highways issue because it's their land.
Yeah, if it's two separate, sorry Steve, if it's two separate things, then with this one it's run by trustees, so it certainly needs doing, and that's why their request is because people are using it as a route to schools for parents as well. If it's a different part, then we can pick that up out of the meeting, and I can speak to Hampshire or just flag it again to make sure that they're aware. Okay.
The part of the path I had ticked that to talk about, the part of the path is the Pylons Wood End, where the resident's been doing it for a period of time. I am going to respond to that later because, as usual with the county, they're going to send somebody to have a look at it. They'll have a look. It's all been cleared because she's been and cleared it for health and safety reasons, and then they won't go back. So I'm going to request that they put a proper maintenance programme on that because it is very well used. Yeah, it needs maintenance. Which was what I was going to ask. Is there any kind of maintenance on this, or will it just be looked after by trustees?
In their proposal, it does say they're going to look after it. There might be some guidance and advice from our own sort of engineers team as well.
Anybody else? Jane.
Thank you, Chair. What impressed me was looking at the list, was the diversity of everything, because obviously these things come into us individually, and we discuss them individually and sort of approve them or not individually. But seeing the various things like, wet wheels and woodland paths, they're completely diverse, they're affecting different people in the community and different parts of the community. So, yeah, I'm very impressed. Thank you.
He does try sometimes. Any other comments or questions? No? I'm happy to second that. So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of accepting as it is? Thank you very much. When this money goes out there, Ross, can you ask for some feedback? Because we don't often get feedback. But when we do, it's nice to actually filter that back out because people see funds going out of here. But we never get the feedback as to once it's in use.
Yeah, certainly for the grants that we allocate, we didn't get too many applications last year from memory, but what we have in place is that as part of the agreement to accept our funds, they have to provide an update as to how the money has affected them, what they've done, maybe some photos, anecdotal news about how this is improving whatever they might be doing. So we've put that in place in other areas, and this is what we'll be doing again for BHH. So yeah, you'll get all of that information.
Brilliant, thank you very much. The next one is appointment to outside bodies.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just run through the names and what the groups are in the appendices that's attached to the report. So at the top of the list, Bursledon and District Community Association, Councillor Jane O'Sullivan is allocated to attend those meetings. For Hamble School Community Management Committee, it's Councillor Cllr Holland, although we are still trying to establish from the school if those meetings are to continue as they are. The next one is for the Hampshire Buildings Preservations Trust, which is an officer meeting which I will attend as and when they're recalled. Highlands Wood Community Association, Councillor Tonya Craig is the representative. The River Hamble Management Committee is Councillor Steve Holes. And the Solent Sea Rescue Organisation is also Councillor Steve Holes. And the Standing Conference on Problems Associated with the Coastline, Councillor Malcolm Cross is the member representative, with Tony Johnson as the officer, and that is that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. On top of those, we also have the licensing panel, which at the present time is myself, Alison and Jane. Are you happy with all of those? Can I have a proposer? Jane? And a seconder? Alison? Okay, that's been proposed and seconded to accept all those. All those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you very much. Next, we have a presentation on planning guidelines. And is that Rebecca, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, let's get this working. Yeah, so this is just a quick run through of how we determine the planning applications at committee. So every application that we have has to be considered on planning grounds, and needs to be determined in line with the development plan, which for Eastleigh is the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan 2016 to 2036 and the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan. So we have to determine in line with the development plan unless there's material considerations which indicate otherwise. Other relevant considerations can be adopted supplementary planning documents such as the quality places, residential parking standards and planning obligations, relevant government policy including the National Planning Policy Framework, the national which puts a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and this is a material consideration of significant weight. Just some of the key policies from the National Planning Policy Framework is that it seeks to deliver sustainable development, meet housing need, boost the supply of housing, promote the growth of the economy, require high standards of design, and prevent and mitigate impacts. Other material considerations when determining applications include the planning history, previous applications and decisions and appeal decisions, site-specific policies, site-specific matters such as highway matters, residential amenity, biodiversity and drainage, responses from consultees and third-party comments, and in some cases there is precedent, which is like sort of legal case law relating to a site, and we also have to consider the 5-year supply of housing for housing proposals. Non-planning issues which we cannot take into account include these listed, which includes moral, racial and religious views, devaluation of property, loss of a private view, breach of a covenant, matters covered by other laws and legislation such as building regulations and environmental legislation, personal views about the character of applicants, and civil matters such as boundary disputes. Just a quick rundown of the types of applications. I believe all of the ones we've got tonight are full applications, and we also have some listed building application as well. These can then be followed by discharge of condition, and when we determine an application, any conditions that are imposed have to meet specific tests, so they have to be relevant to the planning, enforceable, precise and reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have 4 applications this evening, and Badnam Cottage, your first word, please.
Yeah, thank you again. So yeah, the first application is Badnam Cottage on the High Street in Old Bursledon, and the proposal is for the demolition of the dwelling and replacement with another, a new 4-bedroom dwelling. So in terms of location, this the existing property is located to the north of the High Street, set back from back from the road up quite a steep driveway, so you don't actually see the property from the high street itself. It's a mostly single-storey property with accommodation within the roof space at the moment. You can see some photos here. The first one shows, the first one shows the south elevation with the rear garden, which faces towards the high street, and the second, number 2, shows the view towards the river Hamble, sort of in the distance from that garden. Then number 3 is a rear elevation. Oh no, actually, I just realised that's the same elevation there, but that's all. I'm just going to flip pictures. So we've then got the rear, well, it's the front elevation, but the rear of the site, so the elevation facing north, which has got the parking court, parking area and an outbuilding. And you can see the access as well in these photographs. So in terms of the existing building, as I said, it's mostly single-storey. It does have some accommodation within the roof space. And I've just got the existing floor plans here to show that it has 4 bedrooms, 2 of which currently on the first floor and some on the ground floor. The proposal is to replace the dwelling on the same, more or less on the same footprint, but actually on a smaller footprint to the existing building, which you can see the dotted red outline of the existing on the plan, on the screen. The rest of the site layout would remain relatively the same. You'd still have the access from the high street, but there is a proposal to slightly, I don't think you can see my cursor, there we go, slightly widen the access down at the high street to create better visibility. So these are the proposed elevations, and again, if you can see it, I'm not sure if you can, but there's a dotted red outline of the existing building shown. So you can see it will be a taller building than existing, and you may have seen in the report that the design has been amended through the course of the application to increase the pitch of the roof, because as originally submitted, which I'll show in the next slide, it had a much lower roof form, but that was considered to look at odds with, it didn't look proportionate, and it was decided that a steeper pitch created a much more traditional appearance in terms of its overall proportions. What that did do was slightly increase the volume increase over existing. So we've ended up with a 0.55% volume over the 25% that's allowed by policy BU7. But the design improvements were considered to justify that very small increase. In terms of the floor plans, this just shows the layout. So it's now proposing to have the bedrooms on the first floor with a larger open plan sort of living space on the ground floor. This is what I mean, but this is just a confirmation of the volume calculations. It's 25.55% increase. The policy allows for a 25% increase, so it is 0.55% over, but that's considered to be justified in this case and not harmful. We have a couple of images, 3D images. So this is the view you would see coming up the driveway, so that the kind of the rear of the house. And then I've got a map that just shows the proximity to, because I think there's some comments were made about how visible the property would be from the river, wide, longer distance views. So there is quite a distance there. And then we've got the the front elevation, but facing north, with a framed balcony, but that would be unenclosed, so that's not included in the volume calculations. And then I've just got some further photographs that just show the access and the views you get from the high street itself. So this property is really very much hidden from view, and still would be, despite its increase in height. The amount of vegetation and the difference in levels means it wouldn't be readily visible from the actual high street. So just to summarise the assessment and the recommendation, the footprint of the dwelling is smaller than existing. The volume increase very, very slightly exceeds the policy requirement, but is considered to be acceptable. And there is a condition proposed to remove the permitted development rights, so that they wouldn't be allowed to build extensions without coming back for planning permission. And then the steeper roof slope that has now been proposed is considered to create a better design, and the development is considered to be acceptable in design and preserve the character of the conservation area. And there's no objection from highways in terms of the access proposals. So the recommendation is for permission subject to the policies in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. We've got one person speaking in support, and Louise, you know that you've got 3 minutes if you want to come up to the front.
Modern energy efficient home for their family. One of the prime drivers for this proposal was to provide a safe environment for the applicant's adult daughter who lives with epilepsy. Currently, the steep sloping ceilings of the 2 upper floor bedrooms where the son and daughter sleep are unsafe. On several occasions when the applicant's daughter has suffered a seizure and fallen against these sloping ceilings, she has sustained significant head injuries. More space and a safe falling distance would reduce the likelihood of these injuries. Additionally, the only double bedroom where the parents sleep is located on the ground floor, and this is of course separate from the upstairs bedrooms. To have all the bedrooms on the same floor would improve nighttime proximity to their daughter, which is essential in order to attend to any night seizures. The applicants originally intended to build a much larger home than is now proposed, but their pre-application inquiry was submitted around the time of the adoption of the current local plan, which, as you're aware, limits volume additions to dwellings within Old Bursledon to 25%. So, following the adoption of the local plan, the applicant's plans were amended to significantly reduce the size of the replacement dwelling. The submitted plans were amended again following a design review panel where the main concern, as your planning officer has said, was the roof pitch. They were concerned that was too low and it wasn't in character with the area. The roof pitch has now been increased to 40%, more in line with those roofs in the immediate area. As your planning officer also said, this does mean that the volume constraint has been slightly exceeded by about 0.5%, but I think it is agreed that with your planning officers in any case that this amendment has improved the design. The applicants would like to express their thanks to the case officer for her recommendation and also her assistance with guiding the amendments to the plans. They very much hope that after quite a few redesigns now and much advice from your officers, members are able to agree with the officer recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking to time too. Not that we're in a hurry. I should say that. But Mrs. Ward, I can see that you're getting upset. It's very emotive when when you're doing this. You're absolutely fine. We're not ogres, and we totally get where you're coming from. So, I've myself have a daughter with health issues, so understand where you're coming from. But no, it's not great. But we're not ogres. Feel free to sit there and blub, and I don't mean that in a detrimental way, but it's very emotive. Moving house is one thing, building a new one, and then when there's health issues involved, so we totally understand. Members.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, the reason why we have the applications before us tonight is because they're all in the conservation area, which, as you will be aware of, is something that we hold very dearly to our hearts, and we want to protect with everything that we have. Hence the conservation area policy, the special policy area policy, and also the borough plan. I actually think with this application, I know it quite well actually, because I delivered leaflets up there a few times, walked up that slope. Sorry about that, I apologise. And the first thing that you notice is that the house is actually sort of back to front, because you expect the front door to be in the front of the house facing the road. The second thing you notice is that it's got quite a big yard, and you've got that storage sort of outbuilding at the back, which is obviously remaining. But the views to the road don't exist. You can't see the road from the house. You can see a lot of trees, and you can't see the river from ground level. This application then, I looked at really closely, because obviously we don't want large extensions to the conservation area, and also in this case we're looking to knock down and rebuild. I think you've actually been quite clever with this application, because you've got a current building that is quite an unusual shape, bits sticking out in different places. What you're trying to do is create uniform effect with that, and I think that works. The glass, although it's facing the River Hamble, is at ground level, so the effects on the river are fairly negligible because you can't see it. The upstairs windows are pretty well at the same height as the current windows are. So the impact is purely from the extra extension to the roof height. We've heard from the officers that a lot of discussion went on about that, so I think it would be rather sort of odd for me to then say I don't like that and send you away to have another look at it. My feelings on this is, although it's in the conservation area, although it is down for demolition, we've heard that some of it isn't in good condition. Given its position, and it's a similar design to Little Ridge actually, next door, which is similar size, similar height, and all of that. And I did ask the officers if they had a photograph that showed the heights of the two buildings. They're pretty well the same. You can see it in the, I think it's the bottom number 4. They're fairly similar look, although a good deal older. I am therefore going to recommend approval for this, but mainly because the removal of development rights, so that we don't come back and looking to extend it or anything without a planning application. Basically, that's what that means. So I will recommend approval on the cases we see it before us. And also, I think with that 0.5% increase in the footprint because of a larger roof, I don't think we could defend that at appeal. So I'm going to recommend approval.
Thanks, Steve. Jane?
Can I ask a question first, Rebecca, please? It's about the access for lorries. I mean, obviously with, you know, a demolition and then a rebuild, there's going to be a huge number of lorries coming out. I know you've talked about the actual entrance onto High Street is going to be widened slightly, but has account been taken, you know, that they will be able to get up there because obviously it's quite a narrow driveway, and I know there's the courtyard behind, which they would be able to park in, presumably.
Yeah, condition 4 of the recommendation is for a construction management plan to be agreed. So that would cover all those matters in terms of how vehicles would access, where they would park, where they would store materials. So we'd have to approve that before they started works. Yep.
Just before you carry on, I was going to ask a similar thing around the access. You're having it widened, but it's brick. In the photograph, it was brick on either side. So is that going to be rebuilt with the same brick that's there, and how much wider is it going to be?
Sorry, can I carry on? No, go on. No, it's just something short. I mean, when this application first came to us, which was a little while back now, I always have sort of alarm bells ringing when they talk about demolition, especially in the conservation area. But there's always a reason for it. And I mean, you know, you have a cast iron reason for that. It's not going to affect the street scene. You know, there's not going to be any problem with the neighbours. And, you know, I don't want to repeat everything that, you know, Steve has said, but I don't see, you know, any reason for refusing. So I would second Steve's proposal.
Thank you, Jane. Alison?
My only concern, Rebecca, is about the bats in the roof, and that all the things that are written there will be carried out. So there's got to be a licence, a back box, that the roof stripping can only be done at a certain time, and that all of that would be adhered to. That would be my only concern. Otherwise, I totally approve it.
That's covered under condition 9, which says the submitted bat and barn owl survey shall be accorded with in full, which includes section 4, mitigation for bats, and 5, potential for other protected species. So that would include all the mitigation that's proposed within the report.
Malcolm, has that got you thought-provoking?
Yeah, it's just a bat survey. When is the bat survey has been done, is it? So, bat survey's in May. Is it generally May? May, June.
They've been done.
So
Yeah.
when you're doing the bat survey, so the building will be done by the bats, or the roosting of the bats. So I was just wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to scare them away, or is there a kind of, say, temporary accommodation, or how will they do that?
Yeah, well, I don't have the specifics to hand, but there's the mitigations all been set out in the ecology report, which our ecologist has agreed to, and that would all be conditions under condition 9. So it's all been thought through, and it's all covered in that under that condition. So the site has been surveyed for bats. They know there's bats present, and they have agreed the mitigation for that as well.
Thank you, Malcolm. It's quite ironic, isn't it? I don't think we would have been here if the roof hadn't gone up to the pitch it's gone up. But it's our officers that asked for that to go higher. So I think it's quite ironic, really. Because of the way the pitch has gone up, it was kind of on a hill, so much larger, you know, alarm bells ring. So it's quite ironic. When you looked at it on the screen earlier, I actually, my personal preference would have been the first one. So it's a personal thing, I think, but it's taken it up over that 25% as well, which was another reason for bringing it in. So I think it's some of this is in the eye of those that are looking at it. Everything's been said about the reasons for it. I think they've done the bat surveys, so I've got no reason to believe that the mitigation and everything wouldn't be there. The access is covered, which was a concern. The glass on the back being that far away and being lower, as you said, is not going to be that river view. So I think absolutely everything. And I should say thanks to Rebecca, who's taken this on this evening, because she wasn't the case officer, it was Rachel. So you've done really well in answering all the questions and presenting that. So thanks for that one as well. But it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of accepting this application. So that is everyone. So planning has been granted for that. So hopefully there'll be happy tears now. And you'll come back and see us because we're not ogres. Good luck with everything. Okay, the next we have 2 applications for Greywell, which we will take in together. There's no reason why we shouldn't take those together. And over to Cllr for this one. Bear with us just a second. This always happens when we're trying to change over laptops to bring up the plans. And when we're on different Wi-Fi as well, it's always slightly difficult. I blagged my way through that for you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda items 10 and 11 is a householder planning application and a listed building consent application for the same site at Greywell in Old Bursledon. So this presentation will explain the revisions with regard to the previous planning application and the further elements proposed in this scheme, and they will consider the planning and listed building elements together as agreed by the Chair. So there are a few updates to share with members before the presentation begins. So an additional plan was received which showed the existing vehicular gates as well as the proposed gates, and the plans also include a replacement pedestrian gate and show the new proposed wall that would create a bin store area. So as such, the description of the development for both the householder and the listed building application have been amended, and as follows. So it is in bold on the screen and it's a really long description, so I will read it out. So proposed garage with first floor ancillary accommodation, rebuilding of brick boundary wall and new internal courtyard wall, revised scheme approved under the original householder application and the original listed building application, together with single-storey side extension to main house, alterations to existing outbuilding with attached carport linked to proposed garage, and covered walkway to main house, replacement vehicular and pedestrian gates, creation of new timber gate, new wall, and associated tree works and external landscaping. So just to note, the wall for the bin store area had been included in the assessment of the application, but not the pedestrian gate, but this will be shown in the presentation. And the replacement pedestrian gate has been assessed and considered a minor alteration. It would match in design with the proposed vehicular gates, which you'll see in the proposed plans shortly, and it's considered acceptable and can be considered in the applications. So moving on to the main presentation. So these planning applications relate to a detached two-storey Grade 2 listed building named Greywell, and is located on the northern side of High Street and to the western side of Station Hill and Old Bursledon. The property is set in a large plot and has an existing building and shed to the west of the building. The site is accessed via vehicular gates fronting Station Hill. So the site has previous planning history and permission was granted in 2022 for the construction of a detached garage here, an internal courtyard linking the main house and the existing outbuilding, and the rebuilding of the boundary wall fronting Station Hill here. So the rebuilding of the boundary wall did include the felling of 4 protected trees, but on balance at the time of committee it was considered that this was necessary as the wall was unstructurally unsafe. So just to remind members of what was approved back in 2022, so shown on the screen are the elevations and floor plans for the detached garage. So this garage had first floor accommodation and it was accessed via an external staircase here. And there was also a condition that was applied to restrict the use of the garage so that it was ancillary to the main house and it couldn't be used for business purposes. So the top plan shows the elevations for the boundary wall as approved, which were similar in design to the existing. And the bottom plan shows the elevations for the courtyard wall as approved. So these applications today seek permission to revise what was approved. So to the garage, there are minor alterations which will be covered in the proposed plans of this presentation. The internal courtyard wall, which would become a covered walkway, and the boundary wall which proposes an amended foundation design to allow the retention of a protected oak tree. And then with this application, there is a single-storey side extension to the main house, refurbishment of an existing outbuilding and store, and a carport linking the detached garage and the outbuilding. A wildlife area to the north of the site with a timber-filled gate for access, replacement vehicular and pedestrian gates, the insertion of a timber gate with an existing wall, and the construction of a 0.9 metre wall to create a bin store area. So here is the proposed site layout plan showing all these proposed additions and their siting. So I'm going to go around in a circle. So this is the covered walkway. This is the existing outbuilding which is going to be refurbished. The detached garage here. The wildlife area and garden gate to the north. The boundary wall. The replacement vehicular and pedestrian gates are here, and the single-storey side extension is just to the corner of the main house, and then alongside the main house as well is the insertion of a timber gate and wall to create the bin store area. So the next slides will show all the elevations in the same order. So starting with the covered walkway. So the walkway would be connected between the main house and the proposed refurbished outbuilding. It would consist of a wall with timber gates with a pitched roof extending over and supported on oak posts. So the walkway is considered a modest addition and subservient to the main house. It would be seen from Station Hill, but it is not considered to be visually prominent within the surrounding area. And the walkway would be finished in brickwork and roof tiles that would match the house and outbuilding. So moving on to the outbuilding and shed as existing. So these plans show what's existing at the moment, and the dashed lines, hopefully you can see it just about, that shows where a previous garage was sited, but that has since been demolished. So the existing outbuilding and shed, they're tired and in need of refurbishment, and the plans show that the roof to the shed element is slagging, it's kind of sagging slightly, and it's falling into a state of disrepair. So sorry, these plans are a little busy, so I'll go through them as methodically as I can. But they show the proposed refurbished outbuilding along with the revised garage, which would be linked together with an open carport. So I'll focus on the outbuilding first and point out the elevations in the floor plan. So this is the existing outbuilding here and here and here as well, and you can see it's all attached to the carport and the detached garage. So the outbuilding would be refurbished in matching materials, or if this isn't possible, replaced with a like-for-like structure, and the shed would become a store. The sagging ridge would be altered slightly to align with the ridge of the outbuilding, and full-length crystal-style doors would be inserted to the southern side elevation and the rear elevation. So the proposed garage, which is here and here, it doesn't differ significantly to what was originally approved. So the external staircase has been removed, and this is now revised with the ground floor accommodation, and it's been altered to accommodate an internal access to the first floor. So the ground floor has been altered so that there will be a double garage and workshop along with the internal staircase, and the first floor would accommodate a model railway room. And like in the previous application, a condition has been applied to restrict the use of the garage to ensure it's ancillary to the main house and not used for business purposes. And so between the outbuilding garage here is the linked carport, which consists of a low-level pitched roof, which is an open structure supported on posts, and it's between the two buildings, and it would be finished in materials that would match both surrounding structures. So overall, it's recognised that these structures do create additional mass and connect to the host dwelling. However, they are all subservient, sited back from the road, and they're not considered to be visually prominent. And the built heritage consultant has no objection to these elements of the proposal, and he has stated that the additions are all in keeping with the listed building and its status and will enhance its setting to the benefit of all. So moving to the north of the site here, which is the wildlife area. So this would include the installation of a hedge across the width of the site. And to designate this area, there would also be a modest timber field gate to access, which is shown on the screen. And trees would also be planted along the boundaries of this area, extending to the southeast. And the tree planting would accord with the tree condition applied in the previous planning consent, with a further landscaping condition, which has been recommended to ensure the landscaping to the wildlife area is appropriate and provides visual amenity within the area. So moving on to the boundary wall fronting Station Hill and the revised plan. So the wall again will be rebuilt on a like-for-like basis as per the previous planning consent. It would have its high and low section as shown on the elevations. In this application, there would be an amended foundation design, and that would allow for the protected oak tree close by to be retained and continue to provide important visual amenity to the surrounding area, as Station Hill is frequently used by pedestrians walking up and down, and it's a welcomed revision. So here are the existing and proposed replacement vehicular and pedestrian gates. So the black metal gates would be replaced with timber gates and stained in an oak colour, and would be in keeping with the gates seen in the surrounding area. There are no highway concerns from Hampshire highways, and the gates are well distanced from nearby properties and wouldn't impact upon any neighbours. So moving on to the single-storey side extension. So on the screen are the existing elevations to the main listed building on screen. And here are the proposed elevations showing the extension circled in red. So this would adjoin a single-storey projection. It would follow the roof line, and it would be modest in size. There would be an access door to the eastern elevation, and this would lead to the newly formed bin store area. And the extension would be finished in materials that would match the listed building. So here are just the existing floor plans for reference. So to this section of the dwelling, there's a cloakroom, utility room, cupboard and plant room, as well as an existing outbuilding here, which was previously a coal shed. And then here are the proposed floor plans. So circled in red is the proposed extension. The existing outbuilding would be removed to accommodate the extension, and it would square off the section of the house at ground floor level. Internally, there would be some minor reconfigurations where this section of the house would comprise of a cloakroom, lobby area, utility and plant room, and the door inserted to the east elevation, as shown, leads out to this new proposed wall bin store area, and the new timber gate, which is just shown here, inserted into this wall, would just allow better access along the eastern side of the building. So circled in red is the location of the wall creating this bin store area. So the wall would be attached to this extension and to an existing boundary wall, and it spans a very modest area. And as the wall is located behind the larger boundary wall, due to its size and location, the wall and associated bin area would be concealed from the street scene, and it's not expected to be seen within the surrounding area. So next are the existing and proposed plans for the timber gate into the existing wall to the eastern side of the house. Again, this is where it would be proposed, and it would be stained in an oak colour to match the vehicular and pedestrian gates as previously shown. So here are some site photos which show all the areas and all the proposed elements in the scheme and where they are proposed to be located. So photo 1 is the main dwelling, and the side extension would adjoin the existing projection at ground floor level to the right. Photo 2 shows the existing outbuilding and where the proposed garage would be located, linked together with the carport and the covered walkway. Photo 3 shows the location of the covered walkway between the outbuilding and house, as well as the existing vehicular gates. And photo 4 just shows the outbuilding and house from a different angle facing northeast, and the walkway would create a separate courtyard and a parking area. Just trying to get to the next slide. There we go. Some more photos here. So the top photos show the boundary wall and the oak tree. So as noted, the boundary wall would be similar in appearance and design to that of the existing wall. And photo 3 shows the replacement brick proposed, as the existing bricks cannot be used due to their condition. So the applicant intends to rebuild the wall in accordance with the proposed plans and spray the wall with a chemical that promotes moss growth and give a weathered appearance so that it would match the appearance of this wall shown in photo 3. Better. Here are some photos showing the proposed wildlife area. So photo 1 shows the location of where the hedge will be and the trees will be planted along the western boundary. Photo 2 shows the oak tree and where the existing tree planting is proposed to the eastern and northern boundaries. That would result in a rural countryside aesthetic to the site. And photos 3 and 4 show the view of the boundary wall, the main house, as well as the outbuilding and the proposed location of this garage, carport and covered walkway. So overall, there would be zones within the site. So there would be the courtyard area, the parking area and the wildlife area, giving a bit more definition and enhancement overall to the site. Lastly, these photos just show where the timber gate would be located, and the second photo shows where the wall would be placed to create the bin store area. So in summary, and to conclude the assessment of the application, the design of the scheme was considered appropriate. All additions are subservient and importantly have positive features which include the retention of the oak tree and the proposed wildlife area, enhancing the countryside surroundings. The Built Heritage consultant has no objections to the proposal and has advised that this scheme would enhance the listed building and conservation area. There's no unacceptable impact to the countryside, and the garage and the outbuilding are compliant with the old Bursledon BU7 policy and is under 25%. So there's no impact on residential amenity as all the structures are distanced away from neighbours. The use of the garage would be restricted as advised. There is a public sewer in close proximity to the extension, but there's a pre-commencement condition agreeing to the protection of public sewers. And as stated in the report, the ecology matters are still awaiting to be resolved. We are in receipt of a preliminary ecological appraisal and possible further bat emergent surveys. So the results of those would be conditioned, if applicable, based on the results. Therefore, the recommendation is to permit the householder application subject to further ecology information and conditions, and to grant the listed building consent for the listed building application of the applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Just to save confusion, because I've said about the two, if we agreed both of those and the conditions for the wildlife didn't come through, that would mean that the listed one would automatically fall. Is that correct? No, I meant because if we permitted the householder one with the conditions, because we haven't got all the information back, so if it was then refused because those conditions on there, the listed building would then fall.
Not necessarily, no.
Right, so we need...
Not if you've recommended consent. So they could get listed building consent, but they'd still need to get planning permission before they could do the works.
Right.
Because it's two different consent procedures. Does that make sense?
Okay. So they can have the listed consent because we've permitted it, even though they may not get the planning permission if they don't give you all the information.
I think probably it would have to be deferred back, wouldn't it? If there was an issue with the ecology, I think we're not envisaging there being an issue. It's just there's more information to come. If there was an issue, I would expect it would be referred back to the committee. I don't know how it's written, but if you grant, but the listed building consent could be given regardless, but they wouldn't be able to implement that unless they had the planning permission.
So the planning permission, if you don't receive the extra information or there was an issue, that would come back to this committee if we had granted with those conditions on it. Is that clear to members? Or do we want to take them separately?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. We do have Gail, and is it Wigman or Wyman? No. Wigman. Okay. I was asking whether we were going to take the decision separately because obviously you're down to speak on both. But if you want to speak on one or both, feel free to do it however you want to.
I'm not going to speak on them. I'm just here really if you've got any questions and to sort of talk you. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. Just really, I'm here because I live in the house. I just sort of felt it was a good thing to come up and say hello. We're trying to tweak the planning application that was granted last year, trying very hard to keep the oak, which, as you know, we've got planning permission to take down. We don't want to take the oak down. You know, it's a beautiful oak, and we're trying our absolute hardest not to take that oak down. So, and to keep the other oak, which, you know, that's why for the sycamore and different stuff like that. So I suppose that's really why I'm up here, and to sort of explain why we're doing that small extension on the side. We don't have a utility room. We have two big Labradors, and you just sort of walk in through a little corridor to a kitchen. So we're just trying to make a small utility room, dog room, really, at the side and squaring off the house. Ideally, I'd love a utility room treble the size. I'm certainly not going to ask you for that. But I am trying to sort of say I do need somewhere for my dogs to go at the moment. They go nowhere. And so that's really just explaining why we're doing it. We're bringing the stairs in from the garage because we felt they'd rot if they're outside. They're just minor tweaks. The covered walkway and the higher wall is to make a courtyard area and to also get rid of some noise from the A27. Because when you sit outside, it's really, it's almost like you're sitting on a motorway a bit. You know, it's very, very noisy. So we felt that doing a courtyard there would allow you to sit outside without feeling as if you were in the middle of a 3-lane highway. But I'm here also, if anybody's got any questions, happy to answer any questions. Claire's been fantastic, but I certainly got, and the ecology report has been a nightmare to get someone to come out and do it. It's been the biggest problem. It's a timing thing. We're certainly going to do anything you want us to do, we'll do. We're not trying to be difficult or trying to say we're not going to do stuff, but, you know, the preliminary report was done 2 months ago. They came out 2 months ago. He only sent it to me this afternoon. You know, so it's not an easy thing. I'm sure, as you all professionals, you all know about how it is, but, you know, I mean, you know, it staggers me as a layperson how long it takes to get these reports. But if anybody's got any questions, feel free.
Okay, thanks, Gail. It's just something that I thought I would ask about because when we make decisions in the conservation area, we need to make sure that it's clear. So,
I just need you to know why it's not
yeah,
here.
no, that's fine.
And it's been difficult.
It's after the last application saying about the bats and things, we're just consistent.
You
But
can put any condition you wanted about bats
Yep.
on there. We'll do whatever.
Okay.
You know, someone can sleep there to see whatever. I don't mind. I'm not trying to disturb the bats.
anyone want a holiday? There's an offer of sleeping out there.
You know, it's not,
Okay.
but it's, you know, I mean, part of me would say assume there's bats there, and that wherever you need, you know, because there's bound to be, aren't there?
Okay. Right, I will. Thank you very much. I will open it up to members now, so you can take a seat again if you like. Members.
Dealing with the listed building consent first. No,
You have to deal with the planning first.
planning application first. I believe, if I remember correctly, that I recommended for approval the previous application that came here. I can't remember now. It was a few months ago. I'm sure I did. On that basis, you know, I'm delighted that you're trying to save that oak tree, because some of them have already come down, and you can see the openness of the land towards.
When it came down, the beach was wrong.
Yeah. But you know, obviously those trees were a centre of attention, and people like to see them. And that wall was at risk of actually doing somebody serious harm, and that was the reason we accepted that part of the application. So I don't think that changes, apart from the fact you're trying to do a slight alteration to save that tree, which is brilliant. The addition of the wildlife area, I think, actually benefits the park, because it sort of links in with that. So that's good. Assuming the ecology reports come back fine, and officers are happy with that, I'm minded to accept the alterations. But I don't want to be in a position where, if it's an unfavourable ecology report, we are caught in a cleft stick and we can't do anything about it. Obviously, a lot of discussion would happen at that point. But if we approve it tonight, can we do it with a condition that it's relevant to that ecology report? Because I haven't sort of got a problem with it.
I'll ask Rebecca to come back on that one.
But we need to make that clear. We don't want to find that we've made a decision that we regret later or whatever.
So what you'd be doing tonight is giving a resolution to grant, subject to the further ecology surveys, the bat surveys being done and the mitigation being agreed, which is how it's set out. So you wouldn't be formally permitting it tonight. You'd be resolving to permit it, provided the ecology reports are provided and the mitigation is agreed. There is not. I mean, I can't think of cases where we haven't been able to find a way to mitigate impacts on bats. The ecologist would recommend something, then it'd be up to our ecologist to agree if that's acceptable. And the way that we've written it at the moment is that that would come back to the chair and the vice chair to agree.
Yeah.
And head of planning, so Andy.
I'm happy with that, Chair, because the last thing we want to do is find ourselves in a hole, as I say, in a cleft stick where we can't move one way or another. It needs to be a little bit flexible, and obviously this allows time for the ecology reports to come back, however long it takes, with the professionals, and then we can clarify that with the chair and vice chair. I'm happy to propose, Chair. I think the alterations on the whole don't impact the conservation area. I'm interested with the reasons for the covered walkway, but being as it's not stay dry, send the dogs out and keep dry yourself. Great. But yeah, I think that as it's under the 25%, I think we don't have any real reason to refuse it, especially given the Heritage Officer's report as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. the main reason for this planning application seems to be sort of enhancement of the property. You know, obviously we get lots of applications, people want extra bedrooms and things like that, but and I think that's really important. I mean, Claire says in her report that there's going to be a high standard in style and in materials, which I also think is important because Greywell is so prominent in Old Bursledon. Obviously, it's a listed building, it's a large building, it's got very impressive entrance. A lot of visitors walk past it when they're going to the Jolly Sailor, for example, and it's on an enormous plot. So I'm really, I love the idea of the wildlife area, and I think as Claire was saying, any of the sort of building additions, if you like, are very subservient to the property, and obviously it's been really carefully thought about the materials that will be used. So I don't see any reason to refuse it. I would be happy to second.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. I looked at this actually and I thought, although it's quite busy, the plan, it's quite modest when you look at what's there now and the size of the plot as well, which was just, okay, you know, somebody else would come in and say, oh, we'll put that on there and take it to the maximum and, you know, lay out everything. And I totally get for it, like Jane said, the practical reasons. We've got one muddy dog that comes in the house and we try to pin her down and towel her off, and Alison's shaking her head, she knows the... so yeah, two of them, and labs are quite bouncy, shall we say. So yeah, they can come through and cover everything with mud very quickly. So I find this kind of modest just to make life easier in a really nice house. And it was ironic because I was asking about the wildlife, but I did pick up when Claire was putting the pictures in, the photos that were up, I kind of quickly got online, because on one of the garages there's a little thing at the top with an arrow going to it, and interestingly it's a bat box that's going up. So it's just, there's little things there that tell you that this is not only to look after the house but to look after the environment around it as well. So I'm quite happy to go with approval on this one. Don't see an issue with it. Like I say, they're very modest for what is there and the size of the plot. I did get excited for one moment when I saw the gate going into the wildlife area, and I thought, oh yes, somewhere else we can go, and then I had to remember that it's private land, so there'll be no access to that. But yeah, I think it's a great development, their application. Steve, very quickly.
Actually, because as I've already said tonight, I do a lot of delivering a lot of walking up in Old Bursledon, and I have on a number of occasions walked past people that have walked up from Station Road or Land's End Road, and they're looking at the houses and they're spotting which ones used to be in Howard's Way. They visit the Jolly Sailor, and if you weren't around then, it was a TV series in the 80s, but it actually still has relevance because the people do tours of these houses and spot them, and this is one of the ones that they highlight, and I've heard one or two people actually say as I've walked past, that's so-and-so used to live there, and in the TV series. So we may not realise it, but these things have an impact, and the fact that this is subservient to the main building and will help it and will also help wildlife and prevent accidents if that wall falls down, I think it all fits in quite nicely.
That was the other thing to say, the bonus is keeping that oak tree, because although there is permission to lose it, it is beautiful. It's beautiful, yeah, because we were like, is there anything else they could put down to create the wall? So yeah, if the oak tree has managed to be saved as well, it's a massive bonus. Right, so this vote is just on the planning application for the house. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? So that's everyone. We don't need to go through the listed building consent again, but that's going back out to members. Steve's proposing. That's Malcolm seconding. Oh, sorry, it just beat you to it. Any comments or questions that need to be asked on the listed building consent? No, so proposed and seconded. All those in favour of permitting that one? That's absolutely everyone. So that's fine. You have got a double whammy though there, conservation area and listed building. So But it is beautiful. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so whilst they're switching over, we've got the last application, which is southwards for the evening. Let's see how quickly. Whilst they're doing this, we could just note number 13, note the planning appeals. Okay, no we won't, she's done. Quicker than I thought. And thanks again, Rebecca, because this isn't one of yours, but you're here to cover. So, yep, southwards. No, because I'm not.
Thank you, that was fine. This is an application for various works to an existing dwelling called Southwoods at the end of Saltons Lane in Bursledon, and I'll go through it with the presentation. The application site is at the very end of Saltons Lane in a group of 4 properties that have sort of gated access, and it's the sort of southernmost one, I suppose you'd call it, with a very large sort of corner plot. And I think many of you will be aware that at one time it had a much larger area of land, and this house here on the lake was allowed at appeal, and that now forms an entirely separate site and planning unit. So this is its own site now, as shown there with the red line. The existing building, this is the front elevation here and the rear. It's had various alterations and extensions in the past, which is outlined in the report. I did look back to double check, there are 2 even more historic planning permissions, but they date right back to the 1960s and 70s. So that's before even the conservation area was put in place. So it has been extended. And the extensions it has had has already taken it over the 25% volume increase that's set out under policy BU7. So as it is now, it contravenes that policy, but those decisions were made under the previous local plan, which, although it had a statement in the supporting text of the policy that said the council might not support applications over 15% increase in floor space, so just to confuse things even more, it was floor space then. That wasn't stipulated specifically in the policy, so it wasn't, and the judgment was made by the officer at that time that I think it was 26% increase in floor space was acceptable and the design was acceptable. So that's just a way of summarising that the house is the size it is and it already contravenes policy BU7. So just to then go a bit further and just explain, there's also a detached outbuilding which is like a garage and store building at the moment, and I have just included a couple of photos of the neighbouring properties to show a slight difference in styles and materials that you've got. I also got some photographs today from the adjacent footpath track. I'm not sure if it's a public footpath exactly, but so this is the eastern side of the dwelling here, and you can see that through one gap in the vegetation. Otherwise, it's very much like this. You don't see much of the house from that track. So the proposals are the main elements of the proposal: a first floor extension, which is over this part of the building here, and alterations to the roof to bring it in line, which I'll show you in the next plan, with the main roof of the house. They also want to build a carport here, which is just an open frame structure with solar panels on the roof. There would be fenestration changes to the main house and some materials changes with the tile hanging replaced by cladding. And then over here you've got the existing store building, which is proposed to be converted into a home office with materials changes, which again I'll show you in the plans. This is the existing and proposed front elevation and side elevation. I've circled there where the extension is proposed, so you can see there's a little setback element at the moment. That would be squared off, if you like. There'd be an extension in this area here, and then the roof form would be altered to match that of the other side of the house. So that is, in design terms, is considered acceptable and an improvement, really, because it balances out the appearance of that part of the dwelling. There's quite a large canopied porch at the moment on the front. That's proposed to be removed, and there's also a front extension which is proposed to be removed as well. on the side, try to think which side I've got here. Yeah, it's mainly the materials changes on that side, and then down. Oops, sorry. And then at the bottom of that slide is just the elevations of the carport. Then the rear and the other side elevation. So the rear is mainly materials changes to the materials, going from the tile hanging to the cladding. And then on the side, this is the side that you would see the extension. So it's going from this kind of the slightly setback bit to, I don't know why it's doing that, infilling and then recreating the roof. And you can see there the side of the proposed carport as well. And it's just some existing and proposed ground floor to show the carport, and I think that also shows that's the existing porch which is going, and the existing front extension there which is going. And you can see that more clearly on the first floor plan there. So you've got existing first floor proposed, and the bits that are going are shown in the dotted outline, and that is the extent of the additional floor space in the dwelling, which is about 6 square metres that's created by that extension. And the proposed garage changes are, as I said, it's no change in the size, it's just being changed internally, and sort of new materials for the outside and new roof materials. So as in terms of a summary of the assessment, the design of the proposals are considered acceptable. As I said, the first floor extension is considered to improve the appearance, and the heritage officer considers the whole proposal to have a negligible impact on the conservation area, so no harm to the conservation area. If you look at the removal of the 2 existing elements and then the new bit being put on, it's actually being calculated as a reduced volume over existing, so there's no further increase in the size of the house as to what it is at the moment. There's no impact on the amenities of neighbouring residents due to the distances. There's sufficient on-site parking, and there's no impact on trees. And in this particular case, there's an informative regarding bats. There was a preliminary bat survey carried out which showed some bat roost potential, but in the officer's assessment, they've looked at the fact that a lot of this, so the tile hanging could be removed anyway, and that was where a lot of the bat roost potential could be removed without planning permission. And it was determined in this case, because of the modest extent of the works, that an informative would be sufficient. And that's the recommendation is permission subject to the conditions set out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is no public to speak on this one. Just a question from me. That carport, when you look at the roof from there, because I didn't actually notice that until earlier, it's solar panelling going on there. So that's quite a big, bulky roof. So in terms of the percentage increase, has that carport been taken into consideration?
No, it hasn't, because it's not really a big, bulky roof. They're flush solar panels you can see on this plan here. So it's just a frame with a relatively thin, I'm trying to think of the right term, low profile roof with the solar panels flush to that roof.
It's when you look from the above.
Yeah,
it looks really quite.
It looks
bulky,
larger,
so,
yeah. But there is. If they couldn't enclose that without coming back for planning permission, because it's forward of the front elevation of the dwelling, if you see what I mean. So it's not something they could do under permitted development.
Okay, and something that I just want to make absolutely clear, not that it's going to make a difference to this application, but BU7, because I was looking at this earlier, BU7 was adopted in 1982 in the local plan. So it was changed, it was amended from the 15% floor to the 25% area. But that BU7 is still the plan. So just in future, we need to make sure that when it comes to the history of applications that have gone previous, we need to be looking from 1982, because that was in 1982 that BU7 was in the local plan. So to protect our conservation area in the way that we do, I just wanted to make sure that members are very clear that when you look at the policy, it was adopted in 1982. So any history that comes back for any applications for conservation area in the future, we need to be asking for the history to go back there. I'm going to take it further offline because I need to make sure that we are transparent. It's at the end of the day, we make the decisions on these applications, so we need to be making sure that we're making the correct decisions with correct information given to us. This isn't a go at planners here, it's just the way it's been, translated. So we need to make sure that it is translated in the way that it should be translated. So that said, members.
Nobody else wanted to go first, did they? No. Okay. Not this time. Okay. I've been, as Tonya has and Jane has certainly, and Malcolm, dealing with planning applications in our conservation areas for a long time. And I think actually it's probably the first time that I haven't been able to say to a proposal, it's overdevelopment. But so often in the conservation area in the past, we've had applications coming in trying to get 35%, 40% and trying to justify it. And I think it's unusual, if not unique, for us to be in a position where 3 applications have come before us and none of them are asking for more than, 0.5% over the permitted level. Tonya's right about the history. We have to know where we're coming from in order to make the right decisions, and we have to have all that information before us so that we can make those decisions. Because we need to be consistent. There's no point in having a conservation area if you're not consistent. And we need to be able to justify the decisions that we make in order to try and keep that consistency. With this application, again, we've heard that it's not expanding anymore, which is important because it's clearly expanded in the past. What they're trying to do is do a bit of housekeeping and tidying up with it. Removal of that front porch, which doesn't really add anything, the removal of this small extension allows them to be able to basically square off this building and make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing in with the roof line. It's a little bit odd job at the moment. This tidies that roof line up, and I think it's actually beneficial in that way. As far as the garage is concerned, yes, it is interesting that they want to put solar panels on there. And this is something we're getting more and more in the conservation area as well as in other areas. How the planning system works with solar power. Because it is clearly something that people want to do. And it is clearly something government wants us to do. And I think during the election, two parties, I won't say which ones they were, but two parties advocated the sort of persuading of businesses to put solar panels on their roofs of their buildings, because there are tens of thousands of square footage of roof in this country, on industrial buildings particularly, that could have solar panels on them. And they need to be encouraged to be able to do that, and that probably costs quite a lot of money. So it is something that's not going away. So we have to work out how to deal with it in the conservation area. I think it's probably okay in this case. It's fairly flat, as you've said, Rebecca, and it is over a carport, and as long as that can't be filled in and used for a different use, and the conditions protect that use, I'm happy with that. But this of the 3 applications I was most concerned about because of the previous developments on the site, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't cutting our noses off to spite our faces, because we all prize that conservation area very, very much, as do the residents down there. And what you've heard tonight from 2 applicants is that they appreciate that, whereas in the past that hasn't always been the case. They've tried to fit in with our protection that we give the conservation area, and that's really, really important. So I will propose approval because I honestly don't think that we could object to it and stand up at appeal because it's fairly modest.
Thanks, Steve. Alison?
Thank you. Becky's got it up on Google Maps, the property, and just looking at it, I've just got a bit of a query. Where they're putting the solar panels is in the shade of substantial tree line that is alongside that path.
Good thinking.
So, have they thought about that? Has anybody else thought about that? Because it's definitely really shaded, and I don't know how the property is situated and where the sun comes round, and so whether the sun will come round enough that eventually the solar panels will be in that.
It's not something I'd question. Well, I don't know whether Gary had questioned it, but I mean, my understanding is they don't have to be in full sun to work. I'm assuming they've done some sort of assessment that they get enough light or sunlight, but it's definitely not something I'd question.
The sun is that side of the building.
I mean, it's south facing, so those are on the northern. No, they're not.
If you want me
They're to the north.
Some of them are now daylight.
It is quite dark in that picture, isn't it?
Well, you can dip solar panels with certain diodes in it which shut off and don't affect the others with the sunlight. And
I was going to say it's not going to be material to the planning application anyway. That's just a case if somebody wants to spend money putting them in the wrong place or a place where they wouldn't be the most efficient. That's entirely up to them. So I know it is bizarre, but I'm never shocked. Okay, Steve, if you could turn your mic off, but it has been proposed. Malcolm.
I propose, I had second. But the question I've got is, you talk about cladding, in station vertical cladding in front of the rear two-story, because this is in a conservation area, and you get different types of cladding, which due to weathering and time go different colours, and whether it be, if you've got a light colour one, it'll look awful. And I was just saying, it really is to go along and to point that out, because if you get the wrong type of timber cladding, it will affect the building.
Yeah, there is a condition on there, condition 3, to approve the materials with samples as well. So we would get the materials to be approved before they started putting them on. And as it's a conservation area, that would be taken into account. We'd want the right type. I was just having a quick look to see, I can't recall off the top of my head what the actual cladding was.
It just says station vertical timber cladding in front of the rear two-story.
Yeah. So a timber style. So we would ask for, if they were planning to treat it, we'd want to know that, and they'd have to provide that under the condition.
So it's the effect cladding then, the house then will be dedicated road, and the cladding there looks terrible. Because it's aged,
That's the one down by the sea as well, though. So they use completely the wrong cladding for the environment around it. So, but that's not a conservation area. This being a conservation area, that's got the conditions on there to make sure that is properly protected. Any other member, Jane?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just had two concerns, and they've both been addressed. One, that it might be used as a business, the office, but they've said that it was just going to be for home use. And the second thing, which Steve has addressed, would be that the carport could be made into a garage, therefore, but Rebecca's addressed that as well. So, has it been seconded? It has, yeah. Right, so I'm happy to.
Very quickly, Steve.
My dinner's not going to be ready till 8:30. I've just been reading the report, and I think we need to clarify something for residents who comment. The old Bursledon Action Group in paragraph 15 claim that the property had already been enlarged, which we've established over a period of time. But this application would increase that, but our officers have quite clearly said to us that it doesn't, and that's why we're approving it, because it doesn't increase, because we're losing some and gaining others, which goes back to what I said earlier about being smart when you put in a planning application.
It could be the fact that they've looked at the carport as well, which is why I asked that question, so that we are completely transparent on it. Because I think some interpret that it's any build goes to that 25%, which is why I made sure that we made the point as whether it was included and why not. Yeah. So yeah, we can explain that, which is what we will do. So it's been proposed and seconded for permitting. All those in favour? That's everybody again. Thank you very much. So we have planning appeals to note. We have Old Fairground, which is being lodged. That's the refusal of the detached home, which is in Ars and partly Southampton, and 13 Satchel Lane has been allowed. Is that right? Yeah, that's been lodged. That one's been allowed. And dismissed was the Bursledon Congregational Church. So that was very good news, actually. Steve?
Wanted to, if I may, mention that one, because we've now had 2 planning applications that we've refused on that, both overdeveloped, and they've been supported by the inspector. We were also concerned in this particular application about the parallel parking and trying to get all the cars off the road, because there is nowhere to park off on the road down there. Clearly there is a presumption for development on that site, or redevelopment. Somebody needs to come to us and discuss what might be appropriate and speak to our officers on that site, because it is, we were talking earlier, it's a total eyesore. And leaving it as an eyesore isn't going to persuade us to give approval. It actually needs to be appropriate for the site. And we just need them to come and talk to us and find out what would be appropriate. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, this one.
Frustrating.
Yeah, this one, I think I called up to enforcements because of the state of the grounds, but we've got to allow them time to appeal. So until the time has elapsed for them to appeal, we can't actually do any enforcement. So yeah, I think there's another, although this was appealed, there's another bite of the cherry that they can decide to take if they want. So once that time's lapsed, then we can actually take it back and get enforcement out there. Yeah, yeah. Okay. The last one I'm a bit confused about. I'm just getting, I think it was dismissed as well, because that one says it was allowed. That one says it's been dismissed, but this last one doesn't have anything above it, so I'm just assuming that both of those. Yeah, so that's fine. The Hound Road in Netley, that one was refused at appeal as well, so that was dismissed, which again was a delegated decision, but we did have feedback in that. So that's all of those noted. Okay, that's the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone. Date of the next meeting is the 5th of September. And although at the bottom it still says Pylands Wood Centre, we will confirm where the meeting is nearer the time. We'll just close this meeting, Steve, and then we'll